First, I'd like to thank you for taking your time out of your day to listen to this presentation. Hopefully, you'll find the idea as intriguing as I do. But I also want to just thank you for your time. Now, of course, as the saying goes, you don't know me from Adam, but I am a college graduate in political science and economics. I've been an entrepreneur. I've held a variety of positions, from management to digging ditches for cable, to selling cars, to selling things door to door. So I can't say that if if it's there, I've done it, but I've tried many different things. But I'm always on the lookout for new problems to solve, and I know that ideas are only as important as their ability to be transmitted to someone else. But once again, I just want to thank you for your time. I want you to imagine for a second that you want to build a pyramid. Whatever a pyramid represents to you. Let's go back into history and think about people who wanted to actually have a pyramid built. And let's say that you're Ramses II. Well, if Ramses II wants a pyramid built, he's got the full power of the state, he's got the workforce, he's got, people to manage, he's got access to stones, he's got the harvest, he's got, the state religion, anything he wants to do, he can do. He's only held back by just, whatever the limits of his resources truly are. Now, if someone like Bill Gates, for instance, though, wanted to build a pyramid, well, he would have access to, new technologies, new resources. He could have it made out of steel and concrete, pretty much, probably fairly quickly if he wanted it. Now, there are certain limits to what he could do. He couldn't put one in Manhattan or New York or Paris, but he could probably put one in Detroit or somewhere in Montana, just depending on just how much that pyramid is worth to Bill Gates. Now, let's assume for a moment, though, that he does have certain goals like that. I know he has a foundation that goes out to eliminate, diseases. And in order to get that done, Bill has put some money aside into some sort of trust that's going to power his foundation. Now, luckily, he starts off with a large amount of money, but nevertheless, it's a fairly simple transaction once that resource barrier is met. Now, think about something, though. The difference between Ramses and Bill is that Ramses, once he orders the pyramid, he doesn't care if it's there tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or even 20 to 30 years after his death. All he cares about is whether or not there's a pyramid. So I want you to think about those type of goals in your own life, and I think you'll see how this particular process of what I'm talking about may sound different, or it may sound common, and it'll sound different again. But just think about the things that you would need to accomplish what your own pyramids are, and I think you can substitute those for what I'm talking about, and you should see that they're very similar. So hopefully you'll trust me when I say that I saw an estimate on the internet that said that it costs about 11 grand a year between the ages of 1 to 18 to raise a child. So 11 grand times 18 years, you're looking at about $296,000 is how much it costs to raise a child today. Now, first off, I'd like to apologize to anybody with a background in finance because they're about to find what I say very rudimentary and very boring. But finance isn't everybody's thing, so I prepared this little demonstration here. And I think, this is just something you can go to Google, put in a compound interest calculator, and you can find this on your own. And this is something that, you can easily verify what I'm saying. And I think you'll understand immediately. But again, if it covers stuff you already know, just verify it for those that don't. And just bear with me for just a second. So let's assume that you did a little bit of planning ahead and actually knew that you were going to have a child at least, a year in advance. And when that child was born, you had the foresight to put 3 grand into a separate account, and you were planning on just doing the $3 grand. That's it, which is a very small percentage of that 11, and it's probably even more than, you put this money together, and you said, well, this will be the college fund, and let's say you got a fairly good rate, but you couldn't get it more to compound any more than normal. Maybe we'll say we'll give you 2, maybe quarterly. You probably find quarterly if you looked. And how much money will we have when they enter college? It's a little more than doubled. Let's say, how about when they graduate and those loans, are due 14, maybe graduate a little early. Okay. Now, let's assume for a second, though, that you said that what's the goal of that money, and that goal of the money is to prepare the child to earn money on their own. But why are they earning money on their own? And that's because they're going to be thinking about at that point what you're thinking about right now, which is how are you going to retire on what you're earning, especially if you haven't been able to put anything away. But let's assume for a second that you could go out there and buy like a 70-year treasury, and it returned at about the same rate that we were talking about, which would be true for, of course, every last 10 years and the last probably 90, except for the last 10. But, you have to assume that there'll be something there in 70 years. Not, then it won't matter what you did or didn't do. Well, just how much would that $3 grand be then? Now you're talking about within the neighborhood of 400,000. That's a 401k for what you were just thinking about putting together as a college fund. You could provide at the end of life, or the end of yours or the beginning of their, senior years, enough money that if it was needed, it would be really needed, and if it wasn't, it would go toward the grandkids, assuming there were any. But even a little bit more, under the same rules. And let's say, for instance, that you were thinking about buying a car for your child when they turn 16. Well, now you're looking at almost $1 million. But let's get beyond that for just a little bit. And let's understand that that's a perfectly feasible thing, but you can't go out and get it right now. I want you to kind of imagine, like, if no one had ever invented insurance, and they came up with the idea of auto insurance or life insurance, they'd have to come to you and say, you give me money, and I'll give you money later if such and such a thing happens. Well, the first thing you'd have to do if you were going to kind of establish a company of that nature, you'd have to have a seed money to pay off in the event that something happens, because you wouldn't expect it to be generate enough cash to cover the claims of the claims anytime soon. But let's assume for a moment that we open up the years. Let's say 150. Say 200, and think about all the things that are older than that. All the things, the nation, paper, cars, well, maybe not cars, but there will be things there. And think about what that money could do towards those pyramids. That's a lot. What am I doing to say that I can get that kind of return? Well, if you look at this 30-year treasury, you'll see that it's paying out about 4 3/4, which is pretty close to that what I'm aiming at for 7. And if you look at, just go to Google, type in U.S. Treasury bonds, and look at what they're trading at. You're almost there, right there with 30-year treasuries. Where corporate debt rates are, well, then you're at the very top of what I could find at Yahoo. You're looking at 14 1/4. Now, of course, that's double B rated, but it's not. If you balance that out, of course, you probably want some stocks in there, and mutual funds, of course, and bonds, and a wide-ranging portfolio. But you could expect to see, a few deals in there, especially if you look at the fact that the second one on the list is trading only at 106 and providing a 14. You're not paying too much for that. Of course, these do have higher risk involved. Hopefully, this has piqued your interest. and you realize, as I do, the tremendous value that could be attained through some sort of system to accomplish what we've laid out here today, specifically the idea of the 70-year investment for retirement, as well as even longer-term investing strategy. And I hope that we'll at least be speaking, or maybe even face to face. And just want to thank you again for just to listen to me, and thank you for your time. If you care to know anything else, this is probably the best way to reach me. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I just want to thank you for your generosity and your hard work in setting up this site and making such a thing as this even possible. Thank you again.